A new NATO warning is raising fears that the Middle East conflict could spill far beyond the region. Poland has issued a direct warning to Yemen's Houthis after they threatened Saudi-linked shipping. The Red Sea is becoming an even more dangerous flashpoint as NATO voices enter the confrontation. Poland says any attempt to disrupt Saudi shipping will carry serious consequences. The growing threat to Saudi oil exports is now drawing international reactions from Europe. As tensions rise, the Houthis have released fresh footage showcasing their expanding military arsenal. Poland has warned Yemen's Houthi movement against enforcing a naval blockade on Saudi-linked shipping. Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski said the Houthis would face painful consequences if they move forward with the blockade. His warning came after the Houthis declared that Saudi-linked commercial vessels would no longer be allowed safe passage through parts of the Red Sea. Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski said, and I quote, "If I were a Houthi, I wouldn't do this, as they would face very painful consequences," unquote. Saudi Arabia remains Poland's largest supplier of crude oil, exporting roughly 13.5 million tons in 2025. Any disruption to Saudi shipping could place one of Europe's key energy supply chains under fresh pressure. The Houthis warned shipping companies to avoid Saudi ports or risk becoming military targets. Following the Houthi warning, several Saudi oil tankers reportedly changed course. Some vessels diverted away from the Bab el-Mandeb Strait as maritime security risks escalated. Saudi Arabia condemned the blockade threat and pledged to protect commercial shipping routes. Meanwhile, the Houthis released fresh footage displaying missiles, drones and other military equipment, signaling they are prepared for prolonged confrontation. Yemen's standoff between the Houthi rebels and Saudi Arabia has entered a dangerous new phase, as the wider Iran-US war continues to fuel regional tensions. In what is being viewed as a direct warning to Saudi Arabia, the Houthis released fresh footage showcasing a growing arsenal of advanced military weapons. In the newly released video, Houthi military spokesperson Yahya Sari formally declared that a maritime blockade was now officially in force. What drew the greatest attention in the footage, however, was the display of an array of deadly missile systems operated by the Houthi rebels. The video also showed Houthi anti-ship ballistic missiles being prepared for action, reinforcing the group's declared maritime blockade against Saudi-linked routes. The Houthi rebels further showcased submarine-launched missiles, signaling that these weapons are now ready to be directed towards Saudi Arabia if required. On July 20th, the Houthis officially announced the enforcement of a maritime blockade targeting Saudi Arabia and its shipping interests. The maritime embargo against Saudi Arabia was declared as retaliation for the recent attack targeting Yemen's Sana'a International Airport. Houthi leaders claimed the naval blockade against Riyadh was based on the principle of an eye for an eye, describing it as a justified response. In an official statement, the Houthis accused Saudi Arabia of imposing what they called an unjust siege on Yemen for the past 12 years.
The criminal Saudi enemy continues its unjust and oppressive siege on our dear people for nearly 12 years, plundering our resources and imposing a comprehensive blockade on our ports and airports by land, sea, and air. This has exacerbated the suffering of our dear people to an unbearable level, without any right or justification. This is unacceptable and cannot be tolerated, as it is based on no legal or humanitarian right or justification and has no legitimacy whatsoever. It is an invalid and aggressive siege, with its disastrous consequences for our dear Yemeni people, began by the targeting of Sana'a International Airport in a cruel and treacherous attack on our country. Our people cannot endure this unjust siege and aggression without taking a stand. Our great people are a faithful and resilient people, a people of faith and wisdom, with a just cause, and they have the full right to confront this unjust siege and aggression by all available means. Therefore, and in response to the calls of our dear, valiant people for the great million-man demonstration on the Friday of warning and mobilization, and the preceding large tribal gatherings and rallies, the Yemeni armed forces affirmed the following. First, the Yemeni armed forces declare a maritime embargo against the criminal Saudi enemy, based on the equation of an eye for an eye, effective immediately upon the issuance of this statement. Second, we affirm the right of our great people to respond to the blockade with a blockade, and to respond to all escalation with all escalation, thus solidifying this equation. Third, the Yemeni armed forces affirmed their complete readiness for all options, and any foolish act committed by the reckless Saudi enemy through all escalation will be met with a comprehensive and decisive escalation, by Allah's will and power. Fourth, We call upon the people of our great nation to continue the general mobilization and general call to arms, and to be fully prepared for all scenarios and developments, and to support the fronts with fighters. Fifth, we extend our greetings with pride and reverence to our great Yemeni people who turned out in an unprecedented million-man march of warning and mobilization. We assure them that we will spare no effort in restoring their plundered rights and ending the unjust siege imposed upon them, whatever the consequences and repercussions, relying on Allah and placing our trust in Allah.
Saudi Arabia responded sharply to the Houthis' maritime blockade announcement, condemning the move as a dangerous act of escalation. In a statement issued on July 21st, Riyadh accused the Houthi rebels of dragging Yemen deeper into a devastating regional war. Riyadh's statement said, and I quote, "The Ministry of Foreign Affairs expresses the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia's strongest condemnation of the allegations made by the so-called military spokesperson of the Houthi terrorist militia, who accused the kingdom of besieging the brotherly Yemeni people and claimed the imposition of a maritime blockade on the kingdom." The Ministry of Foreign Affairs recalls the Houthi militia's previous widespread attacks targeting the Yemeni people and infrastructure, including the attack on Aden Airport on December 30, 2020, which resulted in the deaths and injuries of dozens of people. During the truce, the militia also targeted oil export ports in southern Yemen on October 21, 2022, and subsequently carried out attacks that aimed to cripple the government's ability to sell oil, which represents approximately 60% of the government's revenues, and directly impacting the payment of salaries to government employees. The militia also seized 4 aircraft belonging to Yemenia Airways and detained them at Sana'a Airport after they had transported Yemeni pilgrims from Jeddah. Furthermore, the Houthi militia dragged Yemen into the regional conflict and targeted commercial ships in the Red Sea, thereby exacerbating the suffering of the Yemeni people. End quote.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Have you ever wondered what happens when a banking dynasty meets tides of world history, intrigue, and a dash of myth?
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.